Welcome to another episode of Into the Remote podcast, the show where we explore the new ways of working and exciting new future of work. Glad to have you with us again. Welcome to another episode of Into the Remote podcast. Researchers found that it was pretty common among workers to spend about 80% of their workdays communicating with other colleagues. And that's a staggering number. Remote and hybrid work has countless benefits: reduced time commuting, increased flexibility, access to global talent, among many others. But like everything, it comes with certain challenges, one of which is a communication overload. And today, we'll be talking about why and how companies need to improve their communication practices, workflows, and tools to function effectively. And I'm super excited to discuss this topic with Iwo Szapar, co founder of Remote How and Remote First Institute. And Ivo is one of the most vocal voices advocating for remote work since 2017. So, way before it was so cool and so spread all across the globe. And they have helped over 2,500 clients to make remote and hybrid work. Ivo, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here with us.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for accepting the invite. And let's dive right in. In your recent talk, Ivo, you mentioned that if you have just one remote coworker, you already work in a distributed team. And this really made me think, how much do companies realize the fact that they ultimately found themselves operating in a setup that really requires implementing remote rituals?
Yeah, so actually, if you think about even two separate floors in the same office, and the fact that people are not even uh, meeting face to face sometimes between these two floors, they're already remote to each other, right? And then you can extrapolate it on multiple offices in different cities, in different countries, different continents. So we've been distributed for very long time. We were just not using the name distributed, remote, virtual, hybrid, etc., right? So this is nothing new, that we're collaborating with people that are couple meters away or couple thousands kilometers away, right? So it's wording, but it's also mindset that is taken here into consideration. So most companies have been doing this for long. Most companies were not perfect, just in making work, not looking at the location, but just looking at the ways of working, ways of collaborating, ways of creating the culture. The list goes on and on. So right now, when you're looking at the future of work, where it's about the outcome, it's not about the location. There's so many things that needs to be adjusted, changed, or implemented, that we should be focusing on solving these issues, and not trying to come back to the good old days, where we were all coming to the office and then working. So there's definitely no way to go back to this reality. We need to embrace the future. The future has many names. The future has many types how you set it up, but there definitely is a lot of work ahead of us, and that's why advocates, activists as we are, need to support teams, companies, as much as possible.
Ivo, you mentioned that there are different names to remote work, but there are also different stages, right? Like that's an objective fact of how companies are operating. And in one of your talks, you used this kind of a pyramid, right? Like describing different levels of remoteness of a certain company. And on the top, you had like this kind of a remote nirvana, which really caught my attention. But also, other evangelists such as Darren Marf openly admit the fact that companies are on a scale, right? So, a question to you: how much should companies actually strive for reaching that remote nirvana, that full remote setup, or is it even possible? Is it even desirable to try to progress on that scale or on that pyramid?
Yes. So I would say that companies, when we were talking about this pyramid that was created by Matt, that one of the founders of Automatic, the company behind WordPress, in the Nirvana stage, it's no longer about location because the company has figure out the ways to collaborate no matter where people are, no matter the time zone. Like it boils down to the keyword that we'll be using soon in this conversation probably a lot, asynchronous work, right? And of course on top of that the culture is amazing, people thrive, love it, etc., etc. So there are a lot of components that I would say are connected to the statement, this is a great company where people love to work, where people are fulfilled, where the processes, tools, and every workflow is perfect. The location doesn't matter, the time doesn't matter, etc. So this is kind of like this perfect environment that we should all be striving to create, either as leaders of companies, as individual contributors, or people that are supporting this growth, right? And then for some people within this environment, they would love come to the office or like come to the place with other folks from time to time, but there is a built cadence around it, there are habits, rituals like you mentioned, but the time they're spending there, it's more about socializing, hanging out, getting to know each other, maybe sometimes collaborating, brainstorming, right? So I would rather say that there are a lot of aspects how we're going towards this nirvana that are relevant, rather than just saying that on top of the pyramid, this is the all remote and nothing else, and this is where we should be going, right? Because there are different organizations, different needs of certain individuals, and we should be accommodating for them by
And
focusing on different aspects.
And that's super interesting. And I would like to elaborate on that a little bit more. So you're talking about the ideal organization or about ideal way of organizing work, right?
Utopia.
Utopia, right? Like, so it's an aspiration, right? Like
Yeah.
something to look up to. But I'm very curious, like, is it then this organizational utopia, is it defined by the place, or is it defined by much more than just the place?
Oh, much more. So I would say one of the aspects, culture, how you can measure if we're reaching the utopia, multiple HR metrics like the happiness of people, engagement, retention rate, etc., etc., right? So basically answering the question, are people happy that it's Monday and that they are working, or it's like, oh no, it's Monday again, right? So I would say that this is one aspect of this nirvana. Then you have everything related to like how the work is organized, right? That all the ways of working, collaboration, communicating, etc. And here definitely there are examples of companies that are really nailing this, and for instance when it comes to async, Doist is one of them, like the makers of Twist and Todoist, and the list goes on and on. But definitely it's possible, especially it's easier to start on the team level to perfect this and get to this utopia, right? And then the list goes on and on. But I would say that like in Matt's pyramid, right, there are certain stages, and there needs to be an understanding that you cannot change it over the night. It will be a process, but at the end of the day we're creating not just better workplaces in terms of like the companies that will grow faster, better, etc., but we're making positive impact on lives of employees, right? And I think this is one of the drivers why I am so passionate about making this happen for so many years, because we can, through remote work is kind of like a tool that can help us bring the control over our lives as well. but yeah, it will take some time.
So we're obviously talking here about organizational cultural changes. And we know that without the executive and the leaders buy-in, none of this is
Yep.
actually possible, right? Like whether it's on a team level, as you said, or even higher on an all company level. So this is a tough job, right? Like for consultants, for people even working in those companies, to really advocate for these larger changes. So how can we get the executives on board to do something about that future, to change the organization in a way that is going to serve the team and create an environment where the team can eventually thrive?
So I would say we can go from two angles. So one is data. It's like this is a data driven decision. This is a data driven direction that we should be heading towards, making all these changes because A, B, C, D, right? And it can be connected to HR metrics, productivity metrics. It really depends on the business, right? But or maybe case studies from other companies that done it and succeeded in certain ways. But we're not just saying, oh, this is cool, let's do it. But we're saying, okay, like this is the business. It's not the charity organization, but those are the numbers that are saying this is a good business decision. Period. Right. On the other side, I would also speak to the private side of leadership, of like their free time, their private lives, and how distributed work, hybrid, remote, how they benefited from them as well, from that as well, right? In the last, let's say, just 3 years, because like this is where the majority of the market learned what remote is. Of course, for certain period of time that was the hardcore version of remote during the pandemic lockdowns, etc. But then when things starting to get back to normal, like mid-level managers, leadership, they also learn like, oh cool, I can spend more time with my kids, with my grandchildren.
Hmm.
I don't need to be stuck in the traffic, etc. So all these arguments that we're using as individual contributors, employees, but hey, like they're also employees, right? So those are the kind of two aspects. But then also let's add that the third layer here, like leaders need to think strategically about the future, right? It's not just about today, tomorrow, but what will happen in a year, in 2, 3, 5 years, etc. Right? And when you look at macro perspective, when you look at data, when you look at data coming from younger generations about their expectations, and when you look how the job market will change in general, like the continuous growth of freelancers, consultants,
Right.
people that would like to work less than more, right? Maybe work for two projects at the same time, but then work like only 3 days a week, for instance, right? And the list goes on and on. How the market is changing from like pure 9 to 5 full-time employee, that is just going to the office, to people that are not only money driven, people that don't want to go back, that don't want to go to the office every day, people that would like to make an impact, and the list goes on and on about the changes, especially if you look at the generation Z, right?
Got it. So you basically build your argument using data, you appeal to their own personal experience and feelings, and then ultimately you try to evoke that kind of a feeling to look ahead into the future and try to create these
Correct.
things more strategically. All right, so we got the leaders on board. What are the critical
Yay.
Yeah, definitely. That's a big yay, right?
That's a big yay, but that's not that easy as just
I know.
like 3 minutes.
I know. I totally get it. But once you accomplish that, it's a big yay. So
It's a huge one, yeah.
uh, let's say we got them on board. So what next? What are
Yeah,
the critical steps or rituals, as you like to call them, that the company actually needs to adopt in order to succeed
yeah,
with the distributed and more flexible
yeah.
operations?
So I would say that once we're past the mindset, we need to really analyze where we are today in order to understand what needs to be changed and adjusted. And one of the parts of even like the process when we're working with the leadership team is something that we're, for example, doing with clients like our experts, is called remote work audit or hybrid work audit, to basically get a better understanding where they are in terms of communication, collaboration, productivity. The list goes on and on, right? Because before changing stuff, we need to understand how many challenges we have right
Absolutely.
now. So then certain rituals, processes, workflows need to be put in place. When I look right now, what is the main challenge, like the area where there's the biggest legacy and where are potential quick wins, at how we call them low hanging fruits, it's definitely communication. It's both on the aspect of people are sick of spending all days on meetings that could have been an email or that are poorly prepared, and then on the other side, how the communication is organized on a day-to-day basis, either one-on-one communication, chat, emails, or team communication, company-wide communication, and just in general the information flow within the company. So when we look at rituals, when we look at where are these quick fixes, it's definitely communication. Yeah, we can dive deeper into specific aspects, of course.
Let's dive into communication. Communication is really like a nervous system for the companies. And in your recent talk, you used word asynchronous 60 times. And very often when we talk about the remote work, one of the first words that pop out is exactly asynchronous communication. So for our listeners and viewers, Ivo, can you define what asynchronous communication ultimately is?
Sure. So we have synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. Synchronous communication is when we're expecting to get an answer in real time, right? So I'm saying something and I'm expecting that you'll reply. I can also send you a message, can be chat or email, and I'm expecting that you will reply very fast, right? On the other side, you have asynchronous communication, where we're defining how this information flow will come. So I'm sending you a message, but within our internal communication policy, if this is nothing urgent, let's say it's level 3 out of 5, then I have 4 hours to respond, for instance, right? So we're defining how how this communication is actually happening through the policy. So sending the message and I'm not expecting an answer immediately, there is a time where I should get it. So no more always immediate response, right? And this is one of the biggest distractors and one of the biggest challenges, where people are bombarding in real time messages, emails, calls. So then their day is like fragmented. With they've been working, then there was meeting, then they've been called, then the message, right? We are not built to switch context so frequently. So we should be focused on one specific aspect, finish this, and then start the other, right? Of course, there are situations when something is urgent, but this is like the tiny minority, and we should specify what it actually is. Maybe our website is down, or our call center is not receiving like this is urgent, for instance, right? But it needs to be put in writing, right? So async strives to help people better understand what they really want to say. If this is urgent, they help people stay more focused and have fewer interruptions. It helps with the documentation culture of the company, because we have more time to think, we can properly format our message. It can be also a video that we are creating, so we don't need to call a meeting. We can just record a video, do a screen share, pass on some information this way. So at the end of the day, we're planning better our work, which leads to less stress.
So it creates more space for deep focus work. It allows the team for more flexibility, and also it's basically easier to come back to the info to all the information that was created since it's being documented. So those are some really amazing upsides of the asynchronous communication. But for many, it's a pretty new concept. Can you give us some examples of how we can turn the synchronous communication into asynchronous communication?
Yes. So I would ask a question: what should be async and what should be sync, right? Because it's there is this misconception that asynchronous communication equals anti-meeting and like anti-sync just in general. It's more of a question to define what's async friendly and what's sync friendly. So starting from the top, when we're talking about synchronous communication, everything that is connected to team building, that is connected to conflict resolution, performance reviews, like everywhere where the ego is very much involved, all this stuff should stay sync. and
Hmm.
and honestly, ideally actually in person, especially when we're talking about team building, like the conflict resolution,
Yep.
performance, this can be done live virtually, but team building, absolutely. Remote first teams, all remote teams, they're meeting on a regular basis, but this is the time more for socializing. Then you have the part where you can play around, and that will depend on the company experience of the manager, etc., where we have strategic planning, brainstorming, feedback, training. Those are the things that can be a mix of sync and async. So for instance, you can do a lot of prep for the strategy meeting, for brainstorming beforehand, which can be done async. You can use Notion, Google Docs, Miro, play around with Mural, with everything. So then when you're meeting for the actual brainstorming, for the sync meeting, everything is prepared, everyone is on the same page, and we are really using this time wisely, right? Then we are looking at async only stuff. For sure, things like updates, briefings, like even company wide. There are teams that are replacing stand ups with just async updates. Um, this is everything that can be done async, together with documenting our projects.
Got it. And it seems to me that we need to also develop some new skills in
That's correct.
if we really want to get this right. So what skills do we need to develop if we want to get the async communication right?
First of all, we need to all become better writers.
Agree?
So, unfortunately, I see this basically every day, how poorly messages are written, emails are written, poorly formatted, without context, etc., etc. So, for sure, this is one of the most important skills, to be a better writer, to understand what kind of information is needed. And sometimes if you think like, oh, should I add it or not, over communicate always. It's better to add more information, more context, so then you can potentially adjust moving forward after you receive feedback. But that's definitely better. So I would say this is number one. Then, when it comes to async, it's not only about text, but it's also about video. So more and more people are experimenting with recording these async video messages. But if you want to do it right, you cannot just like record like half an hour video. Like you
No.
need to think about basically creating a script from for your video, right? That okay, now I want to give an update to my team and ask them for an input. So you're basically like a movie producer, right? Okay, you're basically preparing an agenda for your video and decide like, okay, here I will share this a couple of slides, here I will share this document, etc. Right? You don't need to be a video producer to like put it together, and can just use the simple tools that are available. um, Another skill, and this becomes a part of the process within the company, is to make decisions async. And there's like a whole framework which you can check actually. It's published on Twist's blog, where there's a 5-step framework to make a decision async, where step 1 is that you're looping the right people. Step 2, you're setting the right context. Like I mentioned, there are people, there is a context, there is a recommended option that you're suggesting we should take, but then you're also listing the number of things that we should consider pro and con, right? You have a single communication channel for this decision. You're helping people as a 4-step keep the feedback loop structured. At the end, once the decision is made, you're documenting this and sharing. So from the couple of things that I mentioned, one of the theme here is that you need to build up specific habits, specific rituals. So if you're asking me what are the skills for the async work, one of the top ones, or like kind of overarching, is that we need to learn how to build up a habit and stick to this. So it's easy to say that I will be doing 10 push-ups every day, but then do it for 3 months every day, right? So
Got
it's
it.
kind of very similar to async work and all the aspects that are important here.
So just to wrap it up, like if you really want to get the async right, first of all, you should become a better writer. So you need to work on your writing skills, also video producing skills, which are once again very much assigned with the the way you communicate the ideas in a written form, and then later on the camera. And the last thing, which was very interesting to me, was the async decision making process. Very often, it's decision making is equals a meeting, right? So
Yeah.
this really puts things upside down. And on the topic of meetings, one of the goals of async communication is ultimately to reduce a number of meetings. But you already mentioned a couple of examples, and we all know that we cannot simply and fully function without meetings. What meetings, in your opinion, Ivo, are critical for remote teams to function in a healthy way?
So, 100% everything that is related to building that connection in the team, the team building, right? Because at the end of the day, we need to enjoy working with each other. We need to learn more about each other. It cannot be just like writing. We're humans. We're looking for a social connection, right? So that's definitely number one. Second of all, if we're talking about teams that are not yet very experienced in distributed work, brainstorming sessions, like this is something that you should be organizing meeting for. But there is a big important message here. You need to put a lot of effort before this meeting happens, but not just as a facilitator, as an organizer of this meeting, but every single individual need to invest time in getting prepared for this meeting. So the
Agree.
meeting is no longer we are just watching slides and then starting from the scratch. No, a lot of stuff should be prepared. So I would say that those are the two examples that you could look at, and I strongly encourage everyone to take a look at the meetings doomsday framework by Asana, where basically they ran an experiment to remove all the recurring meetings from their calendars during related to like certain rules that they implemented, and then recreate only the ones that made sense according to participants of these meetings.
Got it. So if we want to increase the efficiency and improve the operations overall, we should be really experimenting with async communication instead of meetings. But meetings still remain a valid vessel for building trust and building connection within the team.
That's correct. That's exactly true. And when we're looking also, and we need to say it out loud, there are mistakes. There is a blood and tears throughout the transformation process. We need to openly talk about what's working, what's not working. And then the meeting is a perfect place to do it, because there is a body language, there is
Right.
different tones, right? So it will be simply easier if we prepare and have this discussion live, to then improve things as a result of this meeting. But that requires a proper company culture that allows everyone for direct feedback.
Absolutely. And Ivo, the way we communicate synchronously and mainly asynchronously is obviously tied, enabled, and also formed by the tool stack and tools in general that we use in the teams. So for example, it's hard to advocate in a more traditional teams for asynchronous feedback if we do not use Google Documents, right? And Google Docs or Figma that allows us to comment directly into the visuals, into the designs, right? That the designer is working on at our convenience. So, Ivo, what tools do you use to enable remote operations and asynchronous communication?
Number one, Notion. And you've been a part of a very interesting async experiment that we did to prepare the remote first trends for 2023. So we engaged over 40 experts to work 100% asynchronously on a single piece of content, like over 40 trends. We never had a meeting. We just used Notion, and it worked out perfectly. So Notion is definitely number one. Then when it comes to the video part of async, you're using video that is embedded in Slack. We're sometimes using also Loom. So those are the tools that you can experiment with. There is a tool that is competing with Slack around async, Twist, from Dewey. So that's probably like the async tool for the text communication that is they're trying to approach this async nirvana and threads in a really interesting way. And then of course all the tools for digital collaboration, the whiteboards, the murals, the Miros of the world. This is actually also async and sync async tool, right? Depends just if you're using this independently and then you're reviewing this. So I would say that those are the couple ones. And then there is also maybe an alternative to Notion, but more around workflows and processes. Almanac, that is a really good tool for documentation. um, but the tools that our teams are using right now, that are actually not really connected to async remote, just in general, for instance, like Confluence, basically everywhere where you're keeping the documentation, and you can have the interaction between users. This is something that you should look into. So I would rather look at what is your current tech stack and how you can make this distinction, what's async, what's sync, and then codify it, have your ways of working, etc., rather than adding something completely new.
Right. And Ivo, let's touch on the work that you've been doing with and for the company since 2017. And really, you must have been a visionary because, again, you were advocating and evangelizing remote work, way before it became actually mainstream. So, just very briefly, what exactly do you do at Remote? How and Remote First Institute? How do you work with the companies, with your clients?
Yes. So at Remote How, which is the marketplace with remote and hybrid work experts, we focus on two main areas. So we are providing virtual trainings to remote hybrid teams, workshops, webinars, series of virtual training sessions, cohort-based courses, and everything is delivered by world's top practitioners who've built, led these distributed teams, advice companies. They're like Silicon Valley based, large corporates, Walmart, ING Bank, etc. So that's remote how. And then last year in September, with a group of remote first experts, advocates, activists, we launched the Remote First Institute, which is a not-for-profit focusing on educating the market, focusing on bringing the community together, bringing experts together. We're hosting a lot of events. We're creating a lot of materials, publications. Right now, we're starting to work on more and more grants that are supporting the research and development in the space. So we're launching in April this year a remote work score, which would be a free assessment tool, open source tool to check the remote readiness of yourself, of your team. So a lot of the stuff that at the end of the day is helping both individuals, teams, or companies. This is kind of the common denominator of what I've been doing, what we've been doing with team.
What are some of the learnings that surprised you from working with all these clients over all those years?
Oh, wow. That even probably the biggest one is that even though I don't want to say cocky, but even though that you know that you're right and that this is the right way to go, people are still so stuck in their mindset, in like their views on in this aspect work, right? That hey, but that was working for so
Hmm.
many years in the past, like we should be continuing, right? That in some cases you really need to grind and really work hard, not even just to implement the change, but just to change someone's mindset, to be like click, right? I'm on your side. So throughout the years, working with really various clients, humongous corporations, startups, scale ups, it sometimes you're just like, oh come on, like this top 2 plus 2 is 4. But yeah, sometimes it's tricky.
And Ivo,
um
is it
yeah.
changing? Is it changing? Have
Yes.
you seen a shift over those years?
Yes. But I would say that there were different phases when that was changing, right? The 2017, 2020, really small teams, small companies were open to this. Larger ones, absolutely not. Then 2020 was the moment when people saw that remote work can work, like the productivity is not dropping, etc., etc. But still, it wasn't the moment like, oh, this is a long-term solution. No, it's rather just like temporarily. 2021, 2022, for different parts of the world, different organizations, there was like trying to revert back. Some were like, okay, this is the future. And right now, 2023, this is the moment when I can say that a lot of people that didn't believe in this and didn't see a potential and the future changed their mind. But then coming back to like one of the themes of our discussion, the key here is to implement the right rituals, implement the right changes, and stick to them.
To wrap up this conversation, I have to ask you the question that we always ask, and that is what free books or articles or just the magazines inspired you recently into a new way of thinking?
Uh, so last year I went the DAO rabbit hole. So DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, which is a part of the Web3 of the new internet, but not from the crypto trading side of things, but really about the future of work, future of activism. And for those that never heard of DAO, DAO is this concept of people coming together that share the same mission, and they're forming something like a cooperative where they vote on what they are going to work on. They have a shared treasury, and they are working on projects together, and they can even become owners of this common place, the DAO, right? If there is a mission, a DAO group of people can help make something good happen in this. So Google DAOs, and you will find a ton of information, and just go down the rabbit hole.
Cool. So give us just 3 publications to start our journey down the rabbit hole. Just very quickly, 3.
The resources that I would suggest to check out, first of all, Bankless DAO. This is one of the largest DAOs that is educating about the Web3 space. And also, they have different newsletters. One of them is related to DAO only as a concept. The other one is the Llama newsletter. This is one of the DAOs that is helping other DAOs create their governance policies, how to measure, how to build their treasuries, etc. And then Talent Protocol, they're also putting very interesting resources. So those are the couple of that I would suggest checking out.
Ivo, thank you so much for all the insights and all the tips. It was great having you on the Into the Remote podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, and stay safe.